Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. And this is our this is really our first content-driven live stream of the semester for this class. So I'm really excited to have it. We've got a lot to cover, right? I kind of want to go through a quick presentation, and then with any time remaining in our hour, I want to jump into doing just a quick kind of speed run of a website build. Just to kind of jog your memory on the for the bootcamp part of Module 1. But Module 1 is in multiple parts. You have your reading, you have your bootcamp part, your technical part, and we have our design part, which starts out looking at the user experience aspect of everything being like magic. And so this is one of my things that I like to talk about. It's kind of a fun concept. And I usually like to present this in a seated class along with the video that's in your module of Penn and Teller. And it'll make more sense to you as we get into this presentation. So without further ado, since we do have a lot to do today, let's just jump right in and start talking about the concepts that we want to talk about today. So the title here is that user experience design is magic. And right off the jump, right, there's probably a lot of things that you notice, right? Like, what does it mean for something to be magic? What is user experience design? And how do those two concepts link up? Right, so we'll go ahead and we'll start off by defining UX, or user experience. Right, so when you see the initialism UX, or you hear the phrase user experience, what we're talking about is the experience that a user has when they're on a website. Now, there are a couple interesting things to note there. Right, because we are talking about a user experience. We're talking about something that the user has. Right? We're not talking about something that we can necessarily give the user. We're talking about something that the user has. Right? Because like the last sentence there, we have to make sure that the user has the best experience possible when they're on our website. So what is the significance of that? That's where we get into the whole magic issue. Right? Because I want you to kind of keep a thought in the back of your mind. Can you make someone have a good experience? Right? We've given ourselves a task here that we have to make sure that the user has the best experience possible when using our website. But can we force that? Can we make somebody have a good experience? Or is there something else at play here? But before we get into that, let's just define something else so that we can sort of disambiguify some terms that you might have heard. For example, UX, UI. Right? Like if you've looked at front-end web design positions, you might have seen these two things together, UX, UI designer, or you might see them kind of listed there in confluence. Right, and so when we're talking about UI, what we're talking about is a user interface. And so what's important for us to kind of understand is how the UX is separate from the UI. UI is part of a UX. Right, the way that the user interfaces with our website is definitely part of a user experience. But it is not the entirety of the user experience. And that's something that we talk about a lot and we discuss a lot throughout the course. How we can build this interface And we can make a good interface, but if that interface doesn't establish a good experience, then it doesn't really work for our purposes. And so as we can start to look at it in those sorts of terms, we start to see how these two things, while they're often seen together, kind of break apart. Right? Like, I can build a really slick interface, but if it's not effective for that particular site, I've failed my user experience design. So when we're considering these two terms throughout the semester, one of the big things for us to kind of remember is that these two are not the same. Even though we see them together a lot, they're not the same. And it's really, I mean, it's easy to design an interface, right? You can make an interface just in a vacuum on its own. You can go design a nice looking interface and it'll function. But having that interface as part of a greater experience is where it becomes difficult. Right? And so the more we do, the more we approach that. So now that we have those sorts of clarifications, now that we understand those terms, it's time to go back to our question, right? Remember our question from a little bit ago? How can we design someone else's experience? How can we design someone else's experience? If an experience is something that somebody else has, not necessarily something that we can give them, right? Like, think about that. Like, you can go to Disney World, happiest place on earth, and have a bad time. Right? So, regardless of all the work that people put in on whatever, you can still have a bad time. You can still have a bad experience, because experience is personal. So now we're talking about being able to design someone else's experience, and we're approaching that from a concept that it may very well be impossible. And I would argue that it is impossible to imply that we have any control over someone else's experience. But if we want to be good user experience designers, if we want to create a good experience possibility for our website, we can take a lot of cues from magicians. And so how can we do that, right? Well, I've got this great quote here I think sums it up fairly perfectly. I can't do magic. I can only help you see it. This was a quote from magician Peter Samuelson, and I think it's very apropos for our situation. Because newsflash, right? You see these stage magicians. You see David Copperfield and Penn and Teller and David Blaine or whoever. And they do these fantastic feats up on the stage. But none of it's real. It's all just illusory. It's an illusion. Right? But to you, from where you're sitting or where you're watching, when you get engaged in it, when you get involved in it, when you are watching and see these things happen in front of you, that's where the magic occurs. Right? The magic occurs somewhere in between the audience and the magician. Right? It's this sort of intersection between the things that the magician has contrived and the mindset and the visuals that the audience member takes in. So the magic doesn't happen on the stage. The magic happens in the mind of that audience member. And so this would be the time where I would show that Penn and Teller video. It's great, right? Essentially, Penn and Teller go through and do a little demonstration about some of the major sort of magic movements, right? Things like palming and misdirection and things of that nature, right? And they show the illusion from one side, right? They show it how it looks initially, and then they show it from the other side. And they show exactly what Teller is doing and exactly what you would see if you could see behind Teller. And it's two totally different things. Right? But from that audience member's perspective, from where they're sitting, they saw something happen. Whether it happened for real or not, they saw something happen. And because they saw something happen, the magic formed in their brains, right? Like they had this experience. And again, was the magic real? Absolutely not. Like, we get to see the other side of it in that video. It's a fun one. Make sure you watch it. But when we're doing user experience design or UX design, we're operating in the exact same way. Right? When we're making good design, that good design comes at the intersection of the designer, of you, and of the user. All we're doing just like Penn and Teller are creating this environment in which they can sell this illusion, all we're doing is creating an environment in which a good experience can occur. Right, which makes good design really hard. I mean, you can kind of think about what you remember and what you don't remember about interactions on websites. It's much, much easier to remember the bad interactions. Because good designs and good user experience is seamless. It's a part of an entire environment that's been crafted to take you from your problem state, to take you from where you are, to get you where you want to be, that goal state. To get you the information you need, to get you to register for whatever you want, to get you to buy whatever you want, right? And e-commerce and things like that will be a big topic in this course, because e-commerce is rife with UX design principles. Because one of the things there is that you want to maximize sales. Right? So, in a way, we kind of look at business from multiple sides. We look at it from the perspective of you as a working designer with clients, and we also look at it from the perspective of that e-commerce stuff. And how if I'm developing an e-commerce website, what are the things that I need to do to make it efficient and effective? How can I maximize my sales? Which is pretty fun. We'll kind of look at that a little bit. We'll look at that more throughout the semester. Right, but when you're doing things right, when you're making magic, as it were, the user, they don't know you're doing anything at all. And that's what makes this especially tough. Right, because if I'm crafting that experience, it just works. everything flows. I'm able to easily bridge that gap between my problem and where I want to be, my problem and my goal. And everything's great. So as we approach design from a design principle, we're not just looking at how things work visually, although that is a part of it, right? The visuals of a website and how a site looks helps you to do a lot of things that are important in UX, helps you to gain trust, helps you to, have a good baseline experience, right? Because it's these things that, make us kind of want to hang out, right? Like if you have one of those just garishly colored, super busy sites, you hear people say like, oh, this site hurts my eyes. And so if it hurts your eyes, what do you want to happen? You want to get off of it as soon as possible. Or this site is too cluttered. I can't find what I need. You're going to leave before you find what you need and try to find it elsewhere. Right, so when we look at good design principles, it's about more than just how something looks, but it's also about how something works. So we can't directly manipulate somebody's experience. The experience happens in their minds. We have to create an environment in which a good experience can happen. So what's one way that we can do that? Well, since experience isn't something that we can create directly, we have to use some sleight of hand to help us facilitate a good user experience. For example, let's check this out. Haha, did I get you? Probably so. This loading screen or some kind of progress bar. These are examples of sleight of hand. Think about an experience you've had on a website. You click something and nothing moves. You don't get any indication of work happening in the background. So what do? You click again. You click again. You click again. You click again. And all of a sudden you've bought 16 new hats because you just couldn't stop clicking because there was nothing there indicating that it had accepted your first click. And that's what these loading bars and these wheels and things of that nature, that's what they're designed to do. They give you an indication. They give you an affordance, which is a term that we'll be talking about more next module. They give you an affordance that something is happening. So okay, my click worked, something's happening here. I can see it happening because of this progress bar or because of this loading screen or whatever. And so I can move on to the next thing. I can go on. Right, so this is one of the key principles of UX that kind of follows these magic principles. But there are others. There are a whole ton of others, right? But just to get started here, we're talking about working while they're distracted. Working while they're distracted. Right? Something you might have noticed, like if you use Gmail and you send an email. Immediately after you send an email, you might see there a little dialogue there that says unsend, right? Or cancel or something like that. You can't unsend an email, just like you can't unring a bell. After the email's been sent, you can't reach into the internet and pull that email back. This is a feature that they've built out of a flaw, right? Because email transition's also not immediate, right? When I send an email, it doesn't immediately send. It takes a few seconds, right? It may as well be immediate. But I could, just kind of not do anything, or I could add this feature to give my product a bit of a higher perceived value, if you will. Right, here's an extra feature. Not a flaw, but a feature. You can actually stop this from going. We can think of all sorts of other things that we can relate to magic and magicians that are directly related to UX design. For example, if you want to catch somebody's attention, what do? Right? Misdirection. Or, if I want to make somebody look in one place when I don't want them to look in another place, well, I can put more bright colors in a certain place. Or I can make something in a certain place bigger, or put some more padding around something in a certain place. Something that makes that part of the design stand out so that their eyes are directed to that part instead of some other part that maybe is lesser important that I don't need them to be worrying about or whatever, right? There's that, there's all these different concepts that we'll get into as we kind of progress throughout the semester and talk about these different aspects of things. And the more we kind of discuss this stuff, the more we kind of realize that, what we're doing, this user experience design, is a lot like magic. And through all of this, I'm reminded of that famous Arthur C. Clarke quote, which is, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable. Wow, let me have another run at that. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Because it's that experience. You don't necessarily know why it works. You don't necessarily know what's happening. You don't necessarily know all the inner workings and ins and outs of what's going on behind the scenes or under the hood or in the internals. You don't necessarily know. And you don't need to know. Right? You could be a caveman discovering a camera, like a Polaroid. You just take a picture and it comes out. You don't have to understand the inner workings of that device to be enthralled by it, to be interested in it, to have a good experience. That's the same as magic. I don't have to know that Penn and Teller are doing a misdirection and then loading a pin and palming it off and passing it to somebody else. I don't have to know that. And it's better if I don't. Because in the end, it's what's going to be establishing that connection between the magician and me in the audience and creating that magic in my mind. And so when we work hard and we make a good design, we're establishing that connection between you as the designer and the audience or client. Well, really audience and the audience member, the user. And you're creating that experience in their minds, and they don't have to know about all the work that went into it, and they won't know, they won't ever know about all the work that went into it to appreciate it, to love it, to enjoy it, to have that good experience. So any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And typically in these classes, I like to kind of leave you with one of these thoughts to kind of take you throughout the week. And since we're also going to be doing our boot camp demo, we're going to kind of speed run a boot camp demo here. We'll leave you with this thought now. So just come back to this thought. Think back to this thought after you've watched the video. Or maybe I'll throw it back up on the screen really quickly when I'm doing the outro. And I want you guys to think about this through the week. And think about what it means. And think about what it means to you. And what it could mean to other people. Because you know what else magic can be? Magic can be scary. Right? Like if we look at it from different perspectives, magic can be fun. Magic could be interesting. Magic could be enthralling. Magic could be scary. All sorts of different feelings and emotions can get pulled right out when people see magic. And the magician, remember, they're not doing it. Like, they know it's not real, and if you saw the inner workings, you could tell that what they were doing was nothing like what the user saw. What the audience member saw. That doesn't matter. So that's just something to keep in mind this week. Now, let's jump over to a little speed run of a bootcamp build. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code here, just so I can have my programming environment open. And I'm going to try to speed run this today. So we'll be moving a little faster. Like if you were in the, or if you are in, rather, the, let's see, what class did we do yesterday? The Web 215 course, and you saw the demo yesterday. That was a slower demo, and we also will be trying to cover a little bit of different stuff, but we'll get started in the exact same way just because we kind of want to keep it similar. All right, so let me go full screen here. I've already created myself a bootcamp folder. It's right here. I've already got a couple images in it that I want to use. In that presentation that we did yesterday, I created the files externally. I created the files in the folder. Today let's just create them using Visual Studio Code, just so the people that have seen both can see something different. So we'll open our folder. So we're going to open that folder. And that's here, and where are we at? Web 210 Bootcamp Demo. We will select that folder. And yes, I trust the author of that folder because I am the author of that folder. And so if we zoom in here, now that we have the folder opened up, you can see that we have some icons here in our folder drawer or our workspace drawer. And we can see that I can add a new file from here. So I'm just going to do that, right? I'm going to add a new file, and I'm going to call it index.html. And I'm going to add another new file. And I'm going to call it style.css. And so now I have both of these files. I can swap back and forth between them in my drawer. And everything is good. And if I go back to my folder here, I can see that those files have been created. Right? And another thing that you can also see that I have here are some pictures. I have two pictures here. I have a little background pattern, and I have a picture of some food. I thought since this is the web design course, when I did this little boot camp challenge, I would do it with purpose. So I'm going to try to do like a little recipe type site here. You know, a little proof of concept template for a little recipe page. So let's look at those pictures real quick. I have a little pattern, which you can see it there. Pretty fun little pattern. And my food pick, which is pretty cool. And we don't need those, so we can go ahead and close them. We just need to write some code. So let's start out by writing our skeleton. I'll do it pretty quickly. Right, so that's doc type, HTML tags, head tags, body tags. Give ourselves just a little room to work and a little space here, just to have everything visually separated. Helps us out when we're reading our code. Let's add our title. We'll call it recipe site. We'll just make it really simple. And let's go ahead and add a link to our style sheet here in the head. So that would be link rel equals style sheet. Href equals style.css. Right, and we'll go back to that picture that you might have seen the other day, yesterday, right? Because I might mess up because I'm just kind of doing this on the fly. Right, like just trying to find that picture really quickly, just so I can bring that back up, just so we can all remember that. Where is it at? This is taking up time that I didn't want to. This one. Come on. Open. Yeah. When I code with someone watching. So when I'm, now that I'm live coding, just like this, sometimes when you're coding with people watching, it don't work well the way that you might want it to work. Just like this incident here of trying to cook an egg. So now I've linked my style sheet. I can save that. We're good to go. Let's go ahead and start building some structure. I want to do this just a little bit differently here. I want to put a header here and have a nice little header section. In that header, I'm going to put an H1 and I'm going to write recipe site. So we're going to take our H1 header, put it nice and big at the top of the site. We could do all sorts of other stuff with this, but for our purposes here, since again, if you saw it yesterday, one of the things that I kept reiterating is that we're trying to keep this in line with what we learned in Web 1.15. So we're not going to do some of the more advanced things that we're doing in the upper level courses. I might also want to put an ID on this of maybe something like site title. That way I can use that ID selector to target that specific H1. The next thing I want to do something a little bit different here. I want to have a menu bar that's separate from the header. right? So I'm going to use my menu HTML5 element here. And we can actually use that menu bar, or that menu HTML5 element, like an unordered list, which is pretty neat. So instead of UL tags, we can actually use our menu tags, and that gives us a bit more semantic, right? So yesterday when I did the demo, I used UL tags and just turned them into a menu. This time I'm going to use menu tags, which is going to give us some more semantics on the back end, but it'll still look like a regular unordered list. So there's that. We'll just make a few links here. href equals, since I don't have anywhere for these to go, we'll just send them to hashtag. Let's add a target to these. Well, no, because this is a website menu. So we'll just, no target. And we will add our text here. So this will be home. Just for the sake of time, we'll take and copy and paste this. And actually, I need to put this in list item tags. So let's do that. Now we'll copy and paste this. Home. About. Recipes. And contact. Just something that's simple. And so we'll treat that menu like it's its own section. And it can be a little sub bar underneath our header. Then we can add a main. So we'll add a main with a section in that. Inside of that section, we will put our image. img src equals, what did we call it? We called it food underscore pic. .jpg. We'll add some alt text here. Alt equals strawberry banana toast. And we'll close that off. I want to do another unordered list here. Just to put a different type of list here so we can see these things both on the screen. So I'm going to make another, I'm going to make an H1. And I'm going to call it strawberry banana toast. I'm going to make an H2 and write ingredients. And then add my unordered list, which is going to be UL, LI. We have strawberries. LI, bananas, honey. Looks like there's honey in the image. I'm just going based on what it looks like there's in the image. Like if we go back and look at the image again, right, you can see that looks kind of like bananas to me. Not sure if it is or not. Who knows? I just found this picture on a stock photo site, but it looks like we've got some honey here, strawberries here. Makes sense. And then bread. Another H2. And we'll call it how to. And we'll just put a little paragraph of Lipsum here. Just to give ourselves some kind of text on the screen. So let me grab a paragraph worth of lipsum here. In fact, I grabbed 2, so let me go ahead and just separate them into their own paragraphs. /P and P. Good. And we'll add a footer here at the bottom. Footer/footer. Okay. So simple site. And so if we save this, head back to our folder here, open this up, see what we're working with. I've got it right here. Right now, you know, when you talk about UI design, there is nothing here. Right, but one of the things that I want to point out is how that menu tag works. We can see here that that looks exactly like what we would have gotten using a UL tag. It's just a little bit different here because it is semantic, right? Like our browser sees that, or assistive technologies see that, and it says, oh, that's a menu. So I'm going to read it as a menu. Right, so let's go into our CSS now, and let's work with it. Let's start with our universal styles. I like to apply these same universal styles to kind of reset our site and get us in a good place to just start building our simple site. Right, so my universal selector, which is my asterisk, I am going to reset the margin, reset the padding, and add box sizing border box. And that applies these properties to every element on the page. Now, when we go further in our CSS, as we're applying new rules, we can change margin, we can change padding on specific elements. But right here, we're just starting off by resetting everything, which is a smart idea. That way, we start off at the beginning. Let's save. So let's approach our header. We use our header selector. It's full width by default, right? Because if we follow the box model, unless we change the width to a determined amount, it'll be full width. So instead, let's just determine a height here. So I'll say height. What would be a good height here? Let's say 180 pixels. Right, using static dimensions, because that's what we learned when we started cutting our teeth in Web 1.15. We'll give this a background. And instead of doing the fancy background coloring system like we did yesterday, let's just define a color here. So maybe something like I don't know, HSL. Maybe a red, because like red is like an appetite thing. So maybe like a dark red. So maybe like, what would be good? Like a 340. Saturation can be something like 40%. And lightness can be something like 20%. Let's see what we end up with there. It's pretty nice. I think that'll work. We can see our little preview here. It's not bad. I think I might want it a little more redder and maybe a little warmer, right? So maybe we want to take that and make it like 20. Start going clockwise around our HSL wheel. So that's a little more brown. 10. Yeah, that'll work for our purposes. Maybe a little bit lighter. Something like a 30%. Right, one of the great things about using Visual Studio Code, again, is that we have these tools that we can take advantage of. So that's good. We'll go ahead and make our font color white. which reminds me of something that we need to do here. In our universal selector, we can go ahead and make font family sans serif. Good. So now we can zoom out of that, we can save that, and we can start to see our recipe site take shape here. Looks pretty interesting, right? So now one of the things that I might want to do is I might want to take that H1 heading there, make it a little bit bigger, right? So that's why we gave it a particular selector. You know, we gave it the site title selector. So I can use that site title class selector, which is a hashtag for a class selector, and then the name site underscore title. And we'll make it big. Let's make it 24 or font size 24 pixels. Why not? And in our header here, let's go ahead and take our font and center it. So that's text align center. And let's add just a little bit of padding to the top. Since we know we have 180 pixels here, we can add around 100 pixels of padding. So padding dash top 100 pixels, and that'll pull that title off our screen a little, you know, off the top of our screen a little bit. Like right now, it's right there on the top of our screen. 24 is actually a lot smaller. Let's make it let's go 60, right? Let's take that and make it 60. I'm so used to working with other units now, right? Like if I was working in responsive units, I would make that like 4 viewport width or something. Right, so like that'd be 4 VW, and that works off of a percentage of the width of the screen, and you can see it's nice and big. But since we're not working responsively here, let's just stick to using pixels. That way we get a nice big site title there. So now we can move on to looking at our menu here. And I want to give it a bit of a height, a bit of a width. Or I don't want to give it any width. I want to make it full width. So we're going to focus that menu selector. All right, we're going to use our menu element selector. Let's zoom in again. It's full width by default, so we'll give it a little bit of a height. We'll give it a 60 pixel height. What I want to do is I want to have a border that has only the top and bottom defined. And so the easiest way for me to kind of wrap my head around that is to just add a border top rule and a border bottom rule. So maybe we'll make this 3 pixels solid and like a darker color than what we have here, and maybe something that's a little bit different. So like maybe we take that and we go in like a yellow direction, make it more brown and like a dark brown, which if we're going around is going to be about a HSL. That's going to be close. It's going to be rough, like a 60 comma. Let's just look at 60 comma 70% comma 70% just to make sure we're in the right color family here. Yep, that's a nice bright yellow. And I want to darken that up. Let's leave it at a high saturation, but let's darken that down. Right, so now we have a nice little dark. I might even want that darker. 10, just real dark, almost black, but not quite. Let's split the difference there, 15. So we'll do that for the top, and we'll do that for the bottom. And in fact, I might want my border bottom to be just a little bit thicker. So maybe instead of 3, we'll do 6. And we'll leave everything else the same. And so since I did that whole box sizing border box thing, those two borders are calculated into that height. All right, we'll also go ahead and do a text align center here as well. So we'll save. We'll head back here. We'll refresh that, and we can see it there. Like we've got since we've got something that's static, right? It's leaving outside of the box there. But I'm not worried about that. Because I'm going to take those and put them in line. Now, one of the things that you might also notice there is that we have these list item bullets here. So as we are styling our menu items here, we need to remove that. And we need to put them in line. So we'll do that. We'll use a bit of a compound selector here. So that's menu space li, which is about as advanced as we're going to get here. And so we'll say list, style, none, display, inline dash block. Now, let's see what that looks like. We're going to want to add some padding and stuff to these, so. But I just want to see it. So see, there's our menu. It's all nestled right there together. We don't want that. So let's add a little padding. Padding 12 pixels. Let's see how that looks. And we can bring it down from the top just a little more, so we can say, we can use our shorthand here, top, right, bottom, left. So we can go 20 from the top, 0 from the bottom, don't have to worry about the bottom. And really, since it's centered, we don't have to worry about the left and right either, so we can just do that for all intents and purposes. See, just check it out, make sure it looks right. Oh, we do have to worry about left and right because we're doing this. We're spreading them out. Yeah, so let's give it like lots of distance, 48 pixels on the left and right. Boom, little menu. Right, just all the basic stuff that we did in Web 115. Now I'm going to change my focus here for a minute. I'm going to focus on that section inside of main, because that's what contains all of my content. Right, so I want to just kind of focus on it for a minute. Wrong window. So let's focus on the main. Or that's the main and then the section. We'll just do a compound selector there for specificity. I want to add a width to this because I want it to be smaller. Width 960 pixels. We can go ahead and let the height be auto because we have a lot of content in it. But we'll center it up. Margin, 0, auto. And we'll give it a little bit of padding. I think my image is 920 pixels wide. So if I gave it a little bit of padding all the way around, like say 20 pixels all the way around. So padding, 20 px. That would compensate for that extra 40 pixels of the size of the image and go ahead and center it automatically. And it would give me a little bit of spacing from the top between that lower menu bar margin, or lower menu bar border rather, and the picture and all the text in there. So if I save that, zoom out of that, I can check on it. That's looking pretty good. Now what happened to our text here? Did I mess that up a little bit? Let's check our HTML. I did. I meant to put all that in the section instead of the main. So we can just move that directly into our section. Like that. That's a tool that you might not have known about in Visual Studio Code. You can just select code and drag it and get it to where you want it to be. So now we can save that, refresh that. That looks a little bit better. Now since we're using padding here, right, you can see that those bullets are outside of our situation there. We'll fix that in a little bit. Well, let's go ahead and fix that now. Because this is going to be the section UL, a little bit of a compound selector there. And we'll just add a little margin left to it. Like 24 pixels, just to bring it in like that. You know, I actually think I want it brought in left a little bit more. Let's make it 36 pixels. Not 236, just 36. There we go. Pretty good, pretty good. Now we got a lot of white space here. This is what I had that texture image for. I wanted to add the texture image for the background. So we'll do that on our main. So let's see here. This is going to be on our main element. And essentially all we're doing is applying a little bit of a background here. So we'll use our background shorthand, which is going to be background. We want this to repeat. If we didn't want it to repeat, we'd put no repeat here, but since we want it to repeat, we can just go ahead and add our URL. And that's going to bg_pattern. We should probably also put a color in here, just in case like that image fails to load. So I'm just going to grab this color here and put it here and make it lighter. Bring it up to like 80. So that way, if that image fails to load, I still have a background color there that's going to give me a little bit of delineation between that that section there and the background. So let's save that. And you saw that flash of a background color there. Briefly, like you saw that yellow briefly as it loaded in. But then it went away. Right? And so this lets us know that we need to probably put some white behind this so it doesn't all blend in, so it doesn't have that texture behind it, so it's easier to read. So now we can go back to that main section. We'll just add a background of white behind it. And let's see here. Let's try something. Let's use our universal selector to select all of the children of our main section. So that'll be main, section, and universal. So that should be all the children of the main section. And we'll just add a little bit of margin bottom to all of it. Somewhere around 36 pixels. That way, like, we'll go ahead and save and we'll look at it. Like if we see where it is right now, like everything is just right on top of each other. I don't want that. I want it to be kind of spread out a little bit. So now if I refresh, that's way too much. So let's shrink that down a lot. Let's make it like 12 pixels. Right, like we're just doing this on the fly. That's a lot better. Everything's just not on top of one another now. I might want to make this a color, the title a color, and make it a little bit bigger. So let's focus that. Let's see, that is main section H1. Use that compound selector for that one. We'll use the same color that we're using for our header background. We'll just copy that, paste that in there, and give it the color property. And we'll make it a little bit bigger font size. Let's see, right now it's an H1. We'll want to make it bigger. We'll make it 36 pixels, which I think is roughly what it is. So let's make it 48 pixels. You know, we made that title 60, right? Is that what we made it? Let's go back and look. Yeah, we made that title 60. So making this 48 would give us enough contrast to delineate it from the title while still giving it the contrast to delineate it from ingredients and how to. Very nice. We could even center that if we wanted to. I'm going to leave it left aligned for our purposes here. Right, and so really the only thing that we have left to do here is add some substance to the footer. So let's do that. Let's focus our footer selector. F-O-O-T-E-R. And we've really kind of speed run this. But we'll do the height at 36 pixels. Which, like, if you haven't noticed, like, I do a lot of the height stuff, and I do a lot of that stuff in multiples of 6. I'm not entirely sure why I do it. Right? Like, there was a grid system that worked like that, but it's not really a big deal, right? We'll give it that same background color that we gave our header. I want to add a copyright notice to this one. So let's give it a color of white. And let's text align center. Actually, if we put it in a, yeah, we'll just do it this way. And so then in our HTML, we can just add a little copyright notice into our footer. Ampersand, copy, semicolon, recipe site 2021. Let's put this in a span just for good measure, just so it has a tag. Good, good, good. Save all of these. And there we are. We can add a little bit of padding to that, just to make it stand out a little more. In fact, we can add some, like, we can add some margin top here to separate it from the bottom of the main there, although that'll make it look a little goofy, so let's not do that. If anything, we'd want to put some, like, padding on our section. So maybe we'll do that, like change the padding bottom. So it'd be 20, 60, or 20, 20, 60, 20, just to give it a little extra padding on the bottom. And then we can, let's see, what else were we doing? Just giving that span a little bit of padding. So span, in this case, we'll just use the span. Padding, top, 12 pixels. Save that. Refresh that. Yeah, that's not what I want. What do I want? We can put the padding on the footer. Let's just put the padding on the footer. That'd make it work anyway. Padding, 12 px, and we're good to go. Beautiful. So really simple, really basic, but it's a site that's designed with a purpose, right? And you can kind of see how everything's laid out and working here. I'll put this on a GitHub too and post it with the recording so that you all can see that as well. But that's just another quick demo. Like another thing that I might want to do here is like I might want to adjust the line height here. I think that might be something that we could do, or you know, all sorts of stuff. Like but in terms of like a simple site, like if I wanted to jazz this up a little bit, I could definitely jazz up the menu, create a better interface here since we are in the design class. Create a little bit of a better menu here, maybe put a hero image up here in the header. You know, several things that we could do. But in terms of like what we learned in Web 115 for a bootcamp type situation, this gives us a pretty good site that we could use as a foundation to build off of for other stuff. So that's another little demo here for us to do. And you can see that I did that while explaining things in about 40 minutes. So there is that. Cool, but that's all that I have for you for this stream. Covered a lot of material today. If you're watching this later, feel free, and you have any questions, feel free to contact me, send me an email, send me a Teams message, whatever you need to do. Again, I'll be putting the code for this into the announcement along with the recording for the day. I'm going to hang out in the chat for just a minute, just in case anybody who's here with me live has a question. But that's all that I have for you for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.